Hello everyone, I'm Carlos Conroy. On behalf of Colorado Archaeological Society, you're watching Curious Colorado. On a bright sunny morning, I find myself driving up these long windy roads to visit Dr. Jade Luiz and her field school regarding the Colorado Central City Archaeology Project. Being a fellow member of CAS's Denver chapter, Dr. Jade Luiz has opened up the site to members of Colorado Archaeological Society to volunteer. And today, I have the privilege of interviewing her. So I guess talk to me about the history of Central City Archaeology.
So this particular project started in 2023. We ran actually 2 sessions that year, one in the summer and one in the fall. And we've been out here every summer since, which is really great. We've been able to kind of establish a relationship with the community and get a really good sense of what's going on in the site. Initially, we were looking to do excavation of a brothel district or a brothel. Archaeology of sex work is kind of what I do. And so I was working with 3 student volunteers to try and identify good sites. And this one came up on maps as being a potential, and it is kind of the perfect site. Yeah.
And so I guess what is also kind of the history of this site itself? What's here, what you think is here, why this?
So at this site, we have is where the brothel district would have been for Central City, starting around 1870, and had 5 houses at its height. Kind of running almost due north-south along what's now Spruce Street, but would have been a continuation of Pine Street. You had a number of different brothel keepers and sex workers who were living and working up here, and it was never legal. They were just kind of generally tolerated in varying degrees over the course of the occupation of this site. And around 1912 is when it seems like we see the end of sex work up here formally.
Okay.
These houses become abandoned. The 2 that remain become abandoned, and nothing else is ever constructed on this site.
Do we know any of the people who were living here?
Yeah, so we have a couple of names. Madame Lou Bunch is the one that everybody in town really knows. There's a whole festival dedicated to her in June that happens every year in Central City. And she owned House 1, so the northernmost house. And then there's also Madame Nellie Walker, who I believe owned the house that we're standing in, as well as the 3rd house down the row. Fred and Elle Warwick were the last 2 owners of this house that we're standing in, House 2. And then there's also some names of the actual workers. We also have some names of people like domestic service staff and cooks and musicians. And so we're starting to kind of build this sort of list of people who are up here. But many of them are using kind of aliases, not recording their real names or places of origin or ages or anything like that in the government records.
Kind of keep it on down low. Mm-hmm. Any reason why?
It's never legal up here in Central City or in Colorado in general. And so that's kind of part of the reason is trying to, avoid police surveillance. But also there's a ton of stigma surrounding sex work in the 19th century that in many cases really influences the stigma still surrounding sex work in the 21st century. And so I believe that's also another reason why people were kind of using aliases is so that, if they decided they want to leave the life, then they can kind of not necessarily need to carry this job with them into any future life that they have. So
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of more like just a means to an end in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I saw a while back one of your papers and stuff was talking about Madame Lou, how she was kind of, you said, a very empowering woman figure in history.
I don't know about that, but she's certainly an interesting and important figure up here. And one of the things about brothel keepers, especially female brothel keepers, is that they had a lot of wealth in the West, and therefore had a lot of influence in many different ways. I haven't necessarily seen it reflected in the history of Central City necessarily, but there are other places where madams, they give loans, they fund different kind of civic efforts and things like that, and have a lot of financial freedom and power that other women in the 19th century aren't necessarily going to have. Whether or not she's an empowering feminist figure, I don't know, just because, I don't want to say that given kind of I don't know enough about her personality, but she is definitely kind of an important folk figure up here in Central City, and there's a lot of kind of stories about her life that people are really passionate about, and there's a lot of historical interest in the town about Madame Lou. So,
Gotcha. So then you also mentioned that kind of more towards like the late 1920s, people started kind of leaving this area. Any reason why?
Yeah, so really, I mean, by the teens, the town had basically halved in its population, and part of it is because the mines had started to close. Mining was no longer financially really viable up here, and so you had the whole valley used to be just ringed in mines, gold mines, and by kind of the 19-teens, you were really left with only a handful, and so that was a huge reason why people left. They were looking for work. And there wasn't really anything to keep them here. It's a similar reason why you have in 1912, it seems like the district closes, is there's just not enough customer base anymore. We're also in 1912 on the cusp of prohibition in Colorado, and most of the money that's being made in these houses is from upselling liquor. So, so if you're not going to be able to have alcohol sales being your main source of kind of revenue, there's no real point to stay in this business in terms of looking at the financials.
Gotcha. So then what reignited interest in this whole excavation, coming back up here and learning more about this?
Yeah, so this is a kind of an amazing site for a lot of reasons. For one, when these houses came down, nothing was ever built on top. And everybody kind of knew that the district was up here-ish, but there'd never been any archaeology done at this site. And so I'm really interested in archaeology of sex work because we don't have any credible 19th century sources that are written by sex workers about what their lives are like. And archaeology has a really strong potential to illuminate that and kind of establish a little bit more reality of what folks were dealing with, whether that is kind of like day-to-day, being up here, dealing with social stigma and exclusion, dealing with kind of how to maintain their own autonomy and personal identity when they are kind of working for this sort of business. And so we start to see these stories getting teased out of the archaeological record through things like personal adornment, through things like what kinds of materials are being brought to the site, like ordered in. Is it coming from town? Is it coming from Denver? Is it coming from further afield? And just kind of starting to build out what these households would have actually looked like when they were active in the 19th and early 20th century.
Gotcha. So what have been some of the hardest challenges digging over here this season?
This season, the weather. We've been playing chicken with the weather all season. We had one day where we got hailed off the mountain. And so we're always trying to make sure that we're maintaining a really safe working environment for our students and our volunteers. And so, if a rain cloud blows in, I'm always watching for it to turn electrical. So that's a huge issue. Also, the issue that every field school has is that this is a training environment for students. So as much as I'd love to move all of the dirt and find all the artifacts, my priority is to making sure that my students leave this field school really well trained in knowing what archaeology is and how to do it well. And so it means we don't move as quickly as maybe I would like to. So there's definitely finding that center of Zen sometime around the middle of week 2 and going, we're not going to do everything I thought we were going to do this season, and that's okay. So I think that's always kind of a challenge we deal with. And then also, we have photographs of the site. We have maps of the site. And so it feels like we should just be able to put some holes in the ground and find exactly what we're looking for. But it continues to prove to be really kind of challenging. And we dealt this season with 2 features that are really complicated and confusing. One is a potential trash dump at the top of the hill on the south end of the site. We don't know if it's associated with one house or all the houses in the south end. It's got a strange layout. We're still not at the bottom of it. We've been digging it for 3 seasons now. It's very deep and very complex. On the north end of the site, we think we probably found a very shallow privy hole. And, looking at the map, it's like, well, this could be a privy here. This could be a privy here. Like, where are we on the site, and how do we kind of like figure it out based on the data that we do have in the historical record? So it's challenging to kind of like come to a site and go, all right, I should be able to know exactly where I am at all times. And then you start digging and realize that you have no idea what's going on.
Absolutely. So then I guess kind of pivoting gears a little bit, what has been some of the coolest things you guys have been bringing up out of these sites?
We've got so many interesting things. This season in particular, we've in the area of the site we think is privy, we had a whole bottle that we believe probably held celerina, which was kind of a patent medicine nerve tonic that contained coca and cola. So that was it had all sorts of things it was supposed to be treating. We found a stone doorknob over in House 5. That was pretty cool. We've been finding more shoes, which I love shoes because sometimes you can see the imprint of people's feet in the soles. But again, it kind of speaks to kind of personal style. We've got a lot of ceramics and a lot of fancy glasswares and things. And so one of the questions we have is, we've got 5 brothels up here. How are people making their distinctions about like which one they're going to visit on an evening? I've done research with my dissertation work suggesting that, there's these brothels are creating these spaces intentionally to try and drive certain clientele. And so trying to just figure out, are these brothels each kind of decorating themselves and presenting themselves in different ways to attract different clients? Are they all kind of homogenous? Do we have the cheap brothel over in the south end and the fancy brothel where we're standing, or is there not a lot of distinction to be made? So that's another kind of question that we have that, things like the decorative elements can kind of speak to.
Gotcha. So I guess some things never change. You got to figure out which one looks the best to go to.
Precisely, yeah. Which bar are you going to hang out tonight?
Absolutely. So out of the entire history of the site, what artifact has speak to you the most, that you were like the most happy of, or like most historically significant? I know a while back I had a student saying that they had a corset buckle.
Definitely we did find a number of corset parts. We found other kind of jewelry elements, decorative buckles, that sort of thing. This season we found a faceted jet bead that has an engraving on it that was a button. But one of my favorites is always, we've got used to be silver plate spoon commemorating the Battle of Manila in 1898. There's also aluminum St. Camillus Saint medal that was recovered from the trash dump at the top of the hill. We were really, really close to both the Catholic Church and a convent that was associated with your Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet for most of its life. And so, we can't say that this is related to those activities or somebody on site who was practicing Catholic or something. But, it's these little kind of individual personal things. I got really excited about the celerina bottle this season as well, because, it's really designed as like patent medicine for women.
Okay.
And would have been mainly like alcohol and things like that, but oh no. No worries.
All good.
But yeah, so how people are kind of treating themselves at the site is something I'm really interested in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And my last question here is, actually last 2 questions I have here is going to be, if there is one thing you can take away from this site that you either learned or your students you want to take away from that and stuff, what would be the one thing you want just to be taken away from this site?
Yeah. One of the things that I think is most important to take away is that this history is important. We still have a real problem in our society of stigmatizing sex work and sex workers. Their history is important. Their centrality to the history of the West and the history of Colorado makes the study of their lives worthwhile, but also their people. And so that makes the study of their lives worthwhile. And so that's something that we talk about a lot when we're kind of spending the first couple of days in the classroom, when we're on the site, is trying to restore humanity to what people might otherwise be inclined to say about sex work and sex workers. And so, I always try and hammer that anytime I talk to anybody. It's like, these are people and they're making complicated decisions based on their needs and the information that they have. And so if we can kind of keep that in mind as we treat them as research subjects, I think that that's going to kind of help people who are still living who practice sex work in the 21st century. So that's really what the biggest takeaway for me is.
Beautiful. And last one here, how can our fellow members of CAS help you out?
Yeah. So unfortunately we won't be returning in 2027, but in 2028 we'll be back at the site doing excavation, and we always welcome CAS members as volunteers. We have people who dig with us, who come up and offer moral support and get tours of the site. But we have a lot of, I think there's a lot of benefit having CAS members coming out and working with our students. There's been a lot of connections that have been made between students and CAS members, even outside of the realm of archaeology. And so I think there's this mutual benefit that everybody can have to get working together. And I try and make all my students join CAS. And so showing them that CAS members are cool and a good group of folks is always a great thing.
Well, clearly it obviously works. So. Thank you so much for all your time, man. This was a wonderful opportunity, and it's extremely exciting to see future archaeologists get their feet dirty in such an informative site. If you would love to learn more, then I would definitely recommend following their social media. And if you would love to volunteer here and at other opportunities, then I cannot recommend enough joining your local Colorado Archaeological Society's chapter. Well, I'm going to get out of here and help out where I can. And as always, Colorado, remember, stay curious.